What's the time
Yes,
there by?
it's 6 o'clock in the evening in Australia, in Victoria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were from Sydney for some reason, but it's pretty cool that you're from Victoria because we have another speaker later, and her name is Victoria.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
This is a
I
very
find
global
some.
event.
Yeah, I find so many nice links between my speakers, or the people participating. They're linked in different ways, and yeah, yeah, I don't want to sound like Dirk Gently, but I like connected things.
Yes. Well, that is interesting, isn't it? Because the community is quite tight knit, but there's a lot of I'd say growth as well in the community here in Australia because of, you know, maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago, UX wasn't such a big deal. There wasn't, it became interesting, but people were still training, and now it's become quite big,
Yeah, no,
and
I
other
think
areas of design,
everywhere
obviously, as
really.
well. Yeah,
I think especially with the digital age, we really have gone into, yeah, I mean, with digital products, you just have to have a good experience, it's just what it is. It's the rise of technology. I'm
it is,
just
isn't it?
copying the join link, sorry, and I will post it here for those joining to see. Um, see, we can put it here, join the call. All right. Hello. We already have some people joining. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you today, or not see you. I asked that you keep your videos and mics off during the talk. And then afterwards, we will have a Q&A, and then you can switch it back on and ask Catherine all of your questions. Yeah, so I think we'd like to hear where you're all from. Perhaps you can put in the chat where you're from, and if you would like to network or connect with anybody, please leave your LinkedIn details behind as well. And I'll hand it over to you, Catherine. Maybe you can start with an introduction before the talk, and how you got here.
Thanks, Candice, and it's really great to be here. What I might, would it be appropriate to share now? And I've got a screen up, so I could put that on.
All right, yeah, so then I'm going to mute myself and hide my camera, and give you the floor, and yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Candice. And it's absolutely a pleasure to be here today to talk with you about building better product and service experiences for learners. And I'm here for Randstad Design Awareness Week, which is a global event that Candice is hosting, who's here on this call today. And I'm really delighted to see people joining as I start speaking. I know that it's a live stream as well as a recorded event. So for anyone who doesn't see this live, there will be a recording available later. I'm a Melbourne-based design leader working for a global business called Pluralsight, which delivers transformational learning technologies for B2B and B2C customers. And I work with an amazing design team, which is global. My direct reports are actually in the States and Australia, and I have some fantastic designers who work with me both in my team directly and across the group, and some fantastic design leaders who I love spending time with and feel very honoured to share the space with in our business. So I will just move to the next screen. For anyone who's not aware, we're about to go into a referendum in Australia for the voice to Parliament, and I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations as the traditional owners of the land on which I live and work, and from where I'm presenting today. And I would like to respectfully recognise elders past, present and future. And this is a beautiful dot painting Mandela type image here, which is presented as part of the Voice campaign. And you can see a link at the bottom of this screen to that campaign. So as I said, I work in design. I'm also an Australian and a UK dual national. I felt very sad when Brexit went through because I love Europe. I love traveling in general. So very curious about our international attendees here and where you're from. I'd love to see that in the chat if you'd be happy to share it. And would also like to say welcome. I can see that we've got somebody here from Germany, and I can see other people here as well. So please feel free to add your locations and share with us where you're from. Hi, we've got someone from Nigeria. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Nice to meet you too.
Hi,
Hello, Candice. Good morning.
Hi. Thanks, Raviette, and it's lovely to hear your voice. All right, well, just a bit about me. For everyone who's global, there's some groups here that I'm referring to in this slide. I've had affiliations and involvement with people who've said some really nice things here about me as testimonials in this slide, but I'd like to just quickly speak to you about them. So in addition to this fantastic network that Candice has put together as part of Design Awareness Week, I've also had involvement with John Cutler on the top right as a thought partner. John Cutler's quite a well-known person who produces a blog that you should absolutely check out on product design and engineering and technology ways of working, and has great ideas and insights that he shares all the time. So please do check him out. And I've worked with John on his with his previous employer with Amplitude as a reviewer on the North Star framework. So thank you, John, for that opportunity and promoting him here. Also, Dan Zook and Joe Wong, two incredible researchers who also started UX Hong Kong. I've helped them with their Make Meaningful Work community that is a community that's open on LinkedIn. And I love their approach to thinking about learning and also learning cultures from the perspective of design and research. Ed Wong, who is a lean, agile and systems thinking community leader here in Australia, has First and Last Conference, which I've been involved with, as well as Last Clubhouse. It's a really great community for anyone who wants to join globally. And it is a great group. Certainly feel at home with that group as part of that, having the honour of being involved with that group in the past and present. And Jerry Scullion, who is the leader from This Is HCD. I was one of his community leads and in Australia, and have also, worked with Jerry in other ways with learning offerings that he's provided. Jerry has a #1 HCD podcast, so just putting that out there that I've had those affiliations and you should check them out. So from anyone who's here live on the call, I'd just like to ask you what you'd like to learn from this talk. Is there anything specific that you're seeking to understand or know? If there's anything you'd like to know, just pop it into the chat as a question, and we'll also have Q&A at the end, as Candice said. So what is learning? And I'd love to see any ideas about what learning is to you. Tell us how you feel about that. Learning is an interesting space and something that I'm really passionate about, and you'll learn more about that as we go forward. So I'll just move forward to the next slide. As defined by the Oxford Languages Dictionary, it is the acquisition of knowledge or skills through study, experience, or being taught. And the ways I describe myself is this list and probably more things. That sounds interesting, probably, because I firstly in this talk identified myself as a design leader, but I'm also a researcher, I'm a strategist. I would categorize myself as a social data scientist. I've worked in product for many years. I've worked in technology. I've acted as a thought partner, educator, writer, innovator, and so forth. So we put on many roles as we act in different environments with different people, and a lot of that's about learning. In terms of my involvement with learning, I wanted to highlight these groups and activities. So on the top left, I've been involved with learning in my employer context as a provider of capability uplift through my operational leadership within my group, also through participating in learning activities because we are part of a learning platform. I'm a part-time PhD candidate at the University of Melbourne, and I'm learning mindfulness as a teacher training course. Not this year, but in the past many years. I've also taught at General Assembly as a lead facilitator of learning in design thinking, service design and UX. And I've also led the module for UX expertise at the RMIT School of Design in Melbourne for 3 years. This year I've actually taken a break because I've just started my PhD part-time. Communities I'm part of include LAST, as I mentioned before, Make Meaningful Work. This is HCD. I'm in the Design Leadership Forum, and I also have participated in the Transition Leadership Lab. And I've spoken at UX Copenhagen, UX Australia, first and last conferences, and lots of local meetups. I deeply care about collaborating, so a lot of this is about collaboration. I've worked in partnership with Strategizer and a partner here in Australia called Catalyst FX, run by Josie Gibson, around learning innovation. And I've thought partnered, as I said before, with John Cutler and also a person called Max Hanley, who wrote a book about careers for UXers. I've written for IAE Mag. I've also published into an urban design journal, and I've written in Medium independent articles. And I really deeply care about diversity, equity, inclusion, and access for all. So I've represented and led employee resource groups for women in tech, and also mentored and been part of programs such as the Anita Borg and Women Tech Makers as a finalist in their scholarship programs. So the sectors I've worked across are diverse, and because I've worked both in consulting and agency style roles as well as direct and in-house roles, I have benefited from a variety of contexts and seen design applied in many ways. And as I've grown in my career from initially a web designer, front-end engineer and graphic designer, right through to what I would say is a strategist, but also across many of the modalities and verticals of design that you can imagine in a SaaS technology company, I've benefited from these experiences and been able to draw on these experiences in my role in learning as well as outside of learning. And as I said, culture is really important. So when you think about learning, you need to have that sort of, it's partially through motivation and your own agency to learn. And it's also generated by the environments that you're in, making it conducive to learning. So learning is important, and that's why I'm here to talk about it, but also the experiences of learners are more important than they ever have been, given what we're going through as a society. So in each of these businesses that I've worked for, not all of them are learning companies, but when you look at them together, here are some companies that are dedicated to learning in their offering to consumers. So Pluralsight, my current employer, a Cloud Guru, which is affiliated and was acquired by Pluralsight a couple of years ago, RMIT University. I've also worked for RMIT Online as a service design and UX director there. The University of Melbourne, where I've led service design and I'm also a student. Pearson Education, which is a publisher. Career Foundry, which is a Berlin-based startup, and General Assembly, as I mentioned before. But all of these companies had aspects of learning in their cultures where I either have organised learning as a leader or a committee member or guild leader, or I've been involved in strategizing for learning, or actually driving through experiences of learning and learning related operations. So when we look at that together, there's different lenses I've got here. I've got lenses in terms of the design experiences that we deliver, the course design and learning delivery that's offered, and also the roles I've acted in. And that gives me a perspective on why learning is important, but also how that syncs up with our cultures of delivery as we move into technology businesses globally, and the digital economy is just revving up even more than before. So examples of the kinds of experiences that I've designed have spanned B2B, B2C, employee experiences, SaaS, software as a service, education, for example, and other businesses such as financial services. And I've looked at this from the perspective of the student. Most of the time it is from the perspective of the learner or the student, because that's often the end user or the end consumer of the learning, right through to the marketing side, the customer experience of learning, right through to the operations and the service design and strategy around learning and business process improvement, right through to the actual purchase of learning and purchase selection spaces. And I've also looked at the taxonomies related to learning, from careers back to learning, to refactor how learning might be offered in large organisations and enterprises. I've actually digitised books myself to convert to accessibility compliant texts that are digitised for high schools in the Australian curriculum. And I've also worked in innovation spaces, as I said before, with partners to change mindsets around learning internal to education organisations. I've worked across learning ecosystems and looked at the content creation experiences as well as bar experiences in how we deliver learning. In terms of course designing and teaching, the other lens is actually the build and the creation of these experiences through the learning itself. And here is where there is a collaboration opportunity for designers with other people, such as learning science experts, product, there could be productized experiences, content production, all sorts of people might be involved, creative people. In Pluralsight and ACG, A Cloud Guru, we've had developer relations because we deliver productized course products to market that are developer and technologist related. So we've often worked with specialist trainers and people who have subject matter expertise. I've also been the subject matter expert, where I've designed courses for the people who are like me as well. And I've worked in partnerships with businesses such as AWS, ThoughtWorks and so forth, and other kinds of companies to create valuable partnered products for universities. I've looked at delivery models and work systems improvement, and the list goes on. And as I said before, I've played different roles myself in the learning ecosystem. So I've been a director of design and research. I've played in the product and technology space. I'm also a sessional academic. I've led and facilitated learning. I've been a leader of groups that are related to learning and capability uplift. I've built practice strategies myself for operations, mentored and coached. I'm also a student, a lifelong learner, and I'm also a parent. And I think that in all our interactions in life, we learn a lot. So why is education important? This is a big question, and I'd love to see any comments about that in the chat. But I'll take you to this because I think that, in terms of importance, this says everything to me. And this is the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, where there is Article 26 that says everyone has the right to education. The World Economic Forum tells us, though, that 6 in 10 workers will require training before 2027. But only half of those workers, that means 30% of our population, will have access to adequate training opportunities. That's a really big deal. We also know that there are new paradigms for learning for people to actually succeed and flourish in this new world that we're coming into, especially when we don't quite know what it's going to be like yet. With the new technologies that we have and all the buzz around Gen AI, which is exciting, but there's also concerns. We need to address what means, a healthy future for our learners and for our youth as they start growing up, and what we can equip them with in terms of skills and capabilities and competencies to survive and flourish in this new world, to achieve well-being. So you can see here on this slide that there are lots of ideas here that have come out of research from the World Economic Forum, and they are to do with cognitive skills, social and physical skills, right through to intrapersonal skills, how we get on with each other, extrapersonal skills, societal skills, and disciplinary knowledge. And I find that really interesting because it's very similar to the work that I did at NAB, where we were looking at generic capabilities, competencies, and then looking at specific skills with experts. And this was generated in 2023, this model. Also, the OECD, which is the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, has released this research, and it's about how AI at work will affect two sectors, including manufacturing and finance. And it shows that in their research of people in these sectors, they found that in the high 60s to 70%, many staff would be retrained, and at around 15% of staff might be affected or impacted by these technologies in the form of redundancies. There's also a whole lot of new opportunities around new work, which could be between 35 and 48% for the respective sectors. So really interesting data here, and also buying services for external companies. So partnerships there as well. So there's lots of opportunity despite the impacts. So this all brought me to the conclusion, and also from my experience, that, you know, learning and equity go hand in hand, as we see in the education side with the UN statement. And access leads to education and training, which leads to well-being, which leads to healthy communities and societies, which also leads to access. So that all makes a lot of sense to me when I put it down in a thought form. And I also think that it's really powerful. Learning is culturally important. It's a mindset, it's a platform, it's empowering, it's transformational, it harnesses potential, and it supports innovation. It's inclusive. If it is inclusive, it creates access. It can be the great equalizer. It's a political act, and it's a human right. So when we think about what makes a great learning experience, this is an interesting question, right? When we think about all of that, it's quite engaging to me. I hope it is for you as well. So one design principle that we'll go back to here, because this is a design-based forum, is that the late Bill Moggridge said, it's probably about starting with the people. And I have this book at home. It's a great book, Designing Interactions. And ultimately what we are doing is designing interactions in design. You know, we're designing for people to use the designs, whatever they may be, or consume them, or be an audience to them. It depends what we're doing. Or it could be for other things. So, you know, we'll talk about that another time. If you want to go into systems thinking, we can do that. But think about that. It's about people. Let's just start there. And when we think about that, learning is for everyone. You know, so how do we make learning accessible? How do we create equity? How do we help people learn? What I love, and this goes into something I'm about to speak about, is the idea of I'm not this person yet. Now, what is the most critical word in that sentence? I'm not X person yet. It's actually the yet bit. Because if you have access to learning, you have the ability to learn about new things. You know, you have the agency to choose, and there's so much opportunity, right? If we think about, does everyone know who this is? You probably can see the name on the slide. This is actually Albert Einstein. So for anyone who doesn't know who Albert Einstein is, he's a theoretical physicist. He's no longer with us. He invented the theory of relativity, considered one of the greatest scientific minds in the modern 20th century. But the truth was he wasn't very good at school. Yet he's lauded for his intelligence. And he said himself, I've no special talents. I'm only passionately curious. Now, I don't know about you, but that's pretty interesting to me. So I think it's great to be like Einstein, and also to consider designing learner experiences for this mindset. So when we think about growth mindset, that's a term that was coined by a researcher called Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck is now researching organisational culture and learning. But she originally was studying young primary school age children. And what she found was that growth mindset was a factor in not being someone yet versus never being that person. It made a difference to people's ability to achieve outcomes for their lives. And in terms of learning outcomes, it gave kids the ability to feel confident to try, to have a go. So she says that everyone has a mix of fixed and growth mindset, and that mixture evolves with experiences. And it's critical to reward not just effort, but learning and progress, and to encourage appropriate risk-taking, knowing that some risks don't work out. So for many of us who've heard growth mindset, it's not enough just to say you need to have a growth mindset. You need to encourage what we would say in technology is fail fast, learn often, that kind of mindset, and rewarding progress and learning. And also to understand that we all have a bit of fixed in us as well. And these are some of the basic examples that Dweck provided in her book about the growth mindset. So she talks about the different things. So challenges help me grow versus when I'm frustrated, I give up, that kind of thing. It's just an attitudinal shift. And we can also rewire our brains by practicing these things and saying, okay, we can think in different ways. So if you think about learning experiences, whether they're digital or in person, there's lots of different ways educators can help, or trainers, or even automated digital experiences might help learners to keep on going and keep trying and not give up on themselves. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for anyone who's familiar with this model, it came from the theory of motivation. And this is also important because we often would think that learning is about self-esteem and self-actualization. But when you think about the equity and human rights nature of it, you would actually say it's about everything, isn't it? It's actually about access as well. And when we think about well-being, job security, relationships, feeling accepted, part of a community, being competent and capable, having a sense of oneself and dignity, and then being able to also develop talents and abilities and pursue goals, these are all important things. And that's what comes out of learning. So what does learning typically look like? Most of us would think it looks like this. You can see lots of examples. Somebody's on a computer, there's groups of people doing things, learning from each other through reinforcement learning and demonstration, play, traditional teaching methods with somebody up front guiding a group like an expert, and also experimentation. And we experience learning through our senses. We experience it through cognitive processes. We experience it through touch, sight, hearing, smell, and auditory, as well as oral learning. However, when we think about all of those things that we take for granted, sometimes we need to consider the fact that not everyone has access to all of those senses. And we must include people of all abilities, regardless of the visibility or invisibility of the ability involved. And senses make a difference, but learning is not complete if we don't cater for many different kinds of abilities. So it's really important to consider that and think about the way we design accessible experiences. So when we think about access, it's not just about ability, but it could be. It could also be about ethnicity, about identity, and it could be about cultures and geographies, for example, socioeconomic situations, etc. So learning is a big deal, as is education, and we know that it helps us thrive in the world if we are able to access it. So we also need to think about the fact that when we do learn, it's really important to consider the fact that learners, when we're designing learning experiences and we're learning ourselves, that very much it's important to us as a learner. And when we design for the learner, it's important to them. So when we think about the people we're designing for, it is the learner in the case of learner experiences. And all learners also, as a reminder, have a context. So a learner is also a person, unless it's a bot. Just like to say that it could be an artificial intelligence learning system. However, in this case, let's just talk about people, or it could be animals, but we'll just focus on humans. Learners usually have a context, a community. They're part of a larger society, and then they're part of a geography or a place in the world. They could be a global citizen. We all are, really. But, you know, have a think about that, because context is super important in human-centered design. And when we think about that, and the context that they're having, there are also forces at play in their interactions with learning. So whatever those external forces might be, whether it's something that's happening around them, it could be generative AI, for example, or it could be the interest and agency around the choices that somebody makes and what they want to learn, which could be anything. Or it could be just a passion, they want to continue learning. You know, that takes us into a space where learning experiences also need to guide and create relevant choices. They need to provide high quality learning, ideally, have a positive learning experience for these learners, and provide positive and useful outcomes. And from these positive and useful outcomes, they can create personal and workforce and societal outcomes that are also positive potentially. So how might we bring the learner to the heart of our experiences? We start here, like we would with people. And if we're designing for learners, we must be customer and learner orientated. It's really important. And it's often the sum of many people. So even though I work in design, and even though I'm a human-centered designer, by way of example, in the business that I'm part of, or businesses, I could say that I work with many different people from many different walks of life in terms of professional expertise. And often it's collaborative. So no great digital experience from a company like Pluralsight is done by someone like me alone. It's done by many people who are talented and cooperative to make this work for the learner. And by way of example, we have many countries we service through our experiences with many customers. We have many people who provide content to the platform as partners and authors and trainers. We have employees in the thousands across the globe, and we partner with many different external organisations and services. And just to give you a glimpse into what, like a very simple box model of what this looks like in terms of the experience of working in a platform environment or an ecosystem environment. You know, you might have different kinds of learners in B2B and B2C audiences. Clearly, you have different aspects of the workforce who touch the learner or touch the customer. They might be frontline staff. And then you have people who work in the background to support the learning services and provide these services in a way that's meaningful to these customers. And you may have suppliers, and you may have other partners and so on. And then there might be adjacent businesses too, who are either, in our case, you know, are also software as a service, or could be direct learning services in person. So we also have communities. So there's so many things that we need to think about when we design for our customers and learners.
Is everything all right?
Excuse me, sorry everyone, I just had to turn off Siri. I don't know what happened then. So going back to the goal for any product or service-based company, it's to reduce the wall between the organisation and the customer. And this is a pretty common problem for most businesses who are servicing customers. And I would say in the case of learners and customer experiences for learning services and products, in the spaces that I work in, it's less this, with the wall in between, and less of the Conway's law, which is designing systems and services that replicate our communication structures within the business, but don't really do anything for the learner or the customer, and more instead putting the learner at the heart of what we do. So we're really close to the customer. We understand the learners in whatever context they're in, and we interface with them within the organisation and understand them well and organise towards that well. So when we think about the learner being in the heart, we think about any commercial organisation or successful company, and we think about what is their goal. It's to be reputable, to be leading in the market. And this is maybe the commercial goals of the business. So for Pluralsight, we're leaders. We're sitting in the top quadrant, part of this quadrant from IDC. For technology training, for example, we have other competitors up there. We're doing pretty well. For the University of Melbourne, another business that I've worked for and where I'm a student, we're number 1 in Australia, 34 in the world, and number 8 for graduate employability. But it's always an effort to stay there, isn't it, from a commercial perspective? And this is even a learning institution looking at that commercially. So what makes it different for these companies to be successful? How can they actually assist themselves outside of great people like human-centered designers and getting close to the customer and having great data and learning from that data and doing great things for the customer and creating customer value? It's also about the internal values offering. And it's also an ethical positioning, because when you create values, it's about moral principles and behaviour, and it's also about standards around that behaviour. So you can see here, there's a list of multiple different value sets from SaaS companies that I've been part of, and also learning institutions that I've worked with, and the kinds of things that they say. So you can see champion our customers, a community in which students thrive, integrity, courage, and passion. The list goes on. And these are usually corporate values that are held true to the way we work in these businesses. But these initiatives are also important because they enforce the standard around the way we want to create better learning experiences. So I don't think you can go past this. It influences the way people behave and what they do in their work and how they deliver those experiences. And I presented at a first conference where I talked about service design, but I was quoted in this article with another person where the author of the article in CEO magazine said, "Are your values living or dead?" And this was just at the end of my period at RMIT Online. And it was talking about the importance of service design and why artifacts are important. So in the case of design, it might be, and learning experiences, it could be service blueprints, or it could be customer journeys for students. But at the end of the day, you need to revisit them. And how do we stop these artifacts from dying? Well, we need to keep them alive by actually making sure we live these values. So being customer-centered, that means we talk to customers regularly, we understand learners, we observe learners, we experience what the learners are experiencing, and we go with that desire to learn. And then we also continue to keep those documents living. We revisit the data and the insights that we're collecting to make sure they're still current, and we invest enough in those exercises to make sure that what we've got is strategic as well as executionally tactical. Additionally, culture underpins change. So when we think about the way employees feel, it's not, when you look at this model from Gartner, in terms of delivering learning services to people, there are, this is just based on the employee though, from Gartner, the employee should feel invested in, should be part of a shared mission, feel understood, feel autonomous, feel valued, and that specifically says personal growth, and feel cared for. So if you think about those values and apply them to the employee in a learning organisation, that seems pretty synced up, because they care about learning, they care about why they're there, and the mission around education, which I can only speak for myself, I do. However, when you think about the customer, you'd imagine that they would also want to feel that way too. And when you think about the learner, of course, they would want to feel that they can be autonomous, valued, cared for, invested in, and understood. So these are most likely universal values that we should be extending to our customers and our learners in learning experiences. And if we add this lens, on, it requires constant attention and effort. So we're thinking about ourselves, we're thinking about the learner and the customer. When it comes to Gen AI, the impact is quite visceral right now, because we can see on these hype models here that we're all in a learning phase. We're actually, for anyone who hasn't seen the hype cycle before, we're in a space of the innovation trigger, just moving into the peak of inflated expectations here from 2021, which is generative AI, to here, which is 2022. And it probably is a bit over that peak or on top of that peak now in 2023. Also, digital ethics started being at the peak of inflated expectations, and it's starting to come down into the trough of disillusionment here in 2022. So if you think about our role in society as designers and the way we need to come together and learn about Gen AI as consumers of this technology, potentially users of it as well, and then show in learning design how we actually create value for learners and help them on that road and that pathway, which is very disruptive right now. We have quite a lot of challenges in front of us. So we're kind of more like this. We're clustered together, all trying to learn about something and help each other learn when we're working in learning spaces that are delivering technology learning like Gen AI or content like Gen AI, for example. That's where we're at. And thankfully in technology, we've been working with artificial intelligence for a long time. However, the community is still catching up with what this means. So we have a bit of responsibility there too. So just as a reminder, when we're designers, we're designing with and for the people we're designing for. And when we think about organisational design and the organisation that we're part of, there is a little bit of an interaction there between what we do for people outside of the organisation and what we do ourselves, and how we can best deliver value through insights and understanding those people, be they learners or customers. And that impacts on the user experience and the brand. So designers do have a role to play in how successful these organisations, whether they are educational institutions or delivering learning themselves, or working for a SaaS platform like me, how we actually create value and success for the people who really matter, which is the end user, the learner. And when we think about this kind of inflection point that we're in right now, which is a disruptive market force, there is a bit of an opportunity there for us to help each other and help others through this approach, and also to apply great methodologies like service design and think about business process improvement to help support change, and also to be adaptive. And thinking about design in terms of creating possible realities versus effective outcomes, we can work in spaces where we're sitting between ideas and evidence. We're sitting between human-centered design and conceptual design that may be creatively driven rather than evidence-driven, depending on how quickly we're moving. And we really are in an exciting flux space around, how we can actually perform better as designers in a fast-changing environment like we're in now. So design's more important than ever before. And with that ethical slant that I've mentioned before about values, culture, and the moral need for education, we really need to think about that. So thinking again about being less of the organisation that designs a system that reflects the organisation as designers, and more about the designer reflecting the learner needs, and responding to those disruptive forces with workforce strategy that's suitable to enable designers to be effective. So this is a photo of me at NAB, and NAB is an Australian top 4 financial institution. They're global. They have a very large population of people, tens of thousands of people in different businesses globally. We were looking through the work that I was doing as an independent contractor to use human-centered design and social research methods to create a taxonomy of career structures for data scientists, data engineers, and data analysts to prepare the bank for the future of work, which is constantly happening. And you could say that the people I was working with were quite suitable when you think about the latest stuff with Gen AI. So what we were doing was trying to create and identify interest and roles. So we were looking at role families and taxonomies of, career types and role types, and the capabilities, competencies and skills that move into that. And we were looking at knowledge acquisition through that identified opportunity, and practicing and applying that through real life or workplace scenarios, through training, through events, through what was guild orientated activities with communities of practice, to create space for learning. And then going back to, again, the next trigger or sort of decision or disruption we needed to adhere to make sure that that workforce was actually able to transition out of existing old roles to new roles, or to maintain that existing workforce and keep them engaged, to keep them in the bank. So it was a cycle that we were trying to create, a virtuous cycle. And what we're now responding to, you could probably call AI small. And that's a term that's coined by maybe little effect on current employment, as the OECD talks to, but it could become AI big soon, which is a different kind of term where we need to quickly adapt to these new changes. So based on that hype curve and where we get to with this technology, it could become even more important to have more people skilled in data science, for example, or data engineering, or to be literate around AI and analytics. So at that point, it was AI small, and we were looking at the potential disruption that was coming, as I said before. And what we did was we extracted data from IBM Watson, which is the artificial intelligence engine that could, basically through a training model, spit out capabilities and competencies for these skill sets. And what I did was work with that team to create, through other data as well from their guild community, and also through qualitative interviews, some kind of benchmark of what capabilities, competencies and skills were needed for those communities of learners to achieve those roles at some level of competency or knowledge, to get them into new roles or to improve their skill sets, and also propagate the skill sets and literacy across the bank. And so we did lots of conversations. We also wrapped that up into ideas and looked at data and outputs and transferred those outputs into those frameworks and looked at a roadmap. And we found really interesting things, that we had transferable skills. So you can see where the yellow blocks are, there might have been common transferable skills or competencies and capabilities, depending on what the group was, based on the role. And we also found that there were also unique skills based on those roles. And we found that there were common skills across some as well. So we could see opportunities for some data engineers potentially to become data scientists, or some analysts to go into data science or engineering. And we also looked at other roles such as product and design, for example, or other skill sets across the business. And we looked at business support. And we also looked at executives and leaders and what they'd need to be successful in this new environment where data literacy was so important, as was data decision-making and privacy and so forth as well, and governance and data stewardship. So we ended up with some really great outcomes from this research, and that was pulled into training services and all sorts of delivery. And I actually wrote about this in an article. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I can share that with you. You can see here that the OECD has also published something like this in 2023, where they've looked at skills that make sense to develop and maintain AI systems, and also skills that make sense to adopt, use and interact with AI applications. And these are very interesting, and this would apply to any area of expertise, but this is just one area, which is AI. So I'm not far from the end, and I just wanted to show you something else that I produced for the University of Melbourne, which was some service access management journeys that were run with employees in the business. so they could be better at delivering for the customer, which was the learner, across the different operations, stakeholder groups. And we looked at the opportunity spaces for many, including the technology teams, to help with automation and better service support to staff members, academic or professional. We also looked at capability models and business process improvement and maturity models for these people. So we had a bit of a goal, and that was produced with the endorsement of the Chief Operating Officer and the CTO. And that was focusing on the backstage interactions that you would say in service design land, behind the line of interaction, or line of visibility, I should say, right through to the line of interaction. And that was a really interesting project just to get that mapped out, because the technology teams in particular were so happy to have a map that they could use to identify where they could really innovate with their teams around new processes and new ways of working with their customers, which were professional and academic staff. We also worked with the, when I was at Publicis Sapient, worked with the CQU, which is the Central Queensland University, on a student experience-led service delivery and operating model. And this was really important for that business and organisation as a learning institution, because of the pandemic and the impacts of the pandemic on international students and revenue for these universities. Because in Australia, universities are partly privatised, there was a real impact on how these universities could keep running. And there was a big reduction program, and we came in where there was quite a lot of change fatigue, and people were still passionate about the student, passionate about delivering for the students and student experience, but really feeling it after a big change management piece where quite a few roles were reduced. And what we did were workshops and service design, looked at the operating model, looked at service model changes and optimization, and looked at it from the student perspective, as you can see down here with these beautiful storyboard images around moments that matter in that journey for students. And here was the RMIT Online Student Experience Vision that I directed 2018. And this actually was a finalist for the Melbourne Design Awards. We looked at the RMIT Online Student Experience, current and target state. We interviewed stakeholders, partners, and the whole ecosystem around the business, and came up with some really important insights and principles around design for students. And really learning was at the heart, as I've said before. And there were some great principles like fit learning into my life, not the other way around, which I thought were incredibly important. And way back in the day that I referred to before was the secondary school digitisation for the Australian curriculum. I also did something else, but I haven't got it in here. I've got a few things that I should have put in, but I haven't had time to talk to you about. But this was really important. It was a very much a front end project, and this was really just about digitising information and learning for students in an accessible way that could be consumed on portable devices. And this was way back in 2011. So what I'll do is just conclude here with saying, please do, if you are involved in designing for learners, design with inclusion and curiosity, with inclusive practices that are sincere and values driven, and stay curious yourself as a designer and builder of these great product and service experiences. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Catherine. That was really nice. Lots of information, way more complicated than I ever knew possible. And yeah, I thought it was brilliant. Everybody in the call, you may now switch on your cameras and turn on your mics. And if you have any questions, you can ask Catherine yourselves. Or you can post it in the chat. Hi from Germany.
Hello.
So we have, so let me just see here. For those
Hi.
online, you're welcome to join the call as well.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the information and lecture. It was really a lot. And but yeah, it's I really appreciate it, and it's really nice. I like also the all the visual things that represent the information. It's really, yeah, that's really cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohammed.
You're on mute.
Hi. Hi, Catherine. I also want to be thankful for your information. That was great and lots of information. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mazi.
Yes. There are lots of information. Sometimes in some slides, I just wanted to print a screen and save for further learning from your slides. And well, it was very slides there. So many information, and that was great. Thank you for this. That what you added to us. Thank you for that.
My pleasure, Mazi. Thank you.
Is there anybody from an education background here? You have any more questions? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
I'm happy to share the deck, Candice, with you so we can share with the group.
Yes, so we will, I'm busy working on a resource listing page, and we will list all the resources there, including the presentations that are shared. I know for myself, I'm going to have to rewatch this because there was a hell of a lot of information. And, you know, manning the message boards while trying to focus was a bit of a challenge, but I saw a lot of information that I thought, well, I want to really learn more about that. And I think we'll be talking about some of that in the panels, upcoming panels in the following weeks, right?
That's right, Candice. And I tend to think in loops, so you would have seen a lot of that going on with that talk. I hope it wasn't overwhelming and that you were able to grab some of the key messages there. But you know, definitely let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, we have Bettina in the chat, and she's not able to go onto camera or use the microphone, but she's saying thank you very much. Bettina, you're welcome. Next
Thanks,
time.
Bettina. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we also have a couple people online, and I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. Nina also thanks you. Yes, so obviously so early in the day, a lot of people are at work, so they tend to listen in. And I think for the panels, we'll have more sessions after work hours. So then we hope that, yeah, we look forward to having more interactive talks. For you in Australia, it's after work though. It's 6 p.m. Well, must be 7 p.m. now.
Yes, it is, Candice. It's not too late. It's still, I suppose, the middle of the early evening. So I'll probably just hop off and have a cup of tea and reflect on this. It's been a really appreciated you having me here. Thanks.
Yes. In the chat, we're also having a question about the recording. Yes, this recording will be available. So on the LinkedIn Live, you'll be able to watch this full recording back. But I will also edit the video and then, you know, just make it a little bit smoother. And that will be published on Catherine's page and also on YouTube and on the other channels. Like I said, we have the resource listing page, and you'll be able to find more information there. Catherine's details is in the live call, so you can easily connect with her and find her in future panels as well. And also on the portal, the Design for Tomorrow portal, you can find Catherine's presenter page, and there you can find more information about her as well.
Thanks, Candice. It's a fantastic event, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank
And
you,
we're
Catherine.
finished just at 11 o'clock, 1 hour perfectly filled. Thank you, Catherine.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.